porcelain is a strong material and fragile, and a perfume starts off strong as well. The overwhelming sense of smell when you first spray it, but then it becomes fragile as well. It dissipates and disappears.
As you have to cross the small kitchen to get into the main space, you will discover already what you maybe want to order. It's mad dishes, super delicious.
There's a great picture in the exhibition of Liberty in sort of in that late 19th century period. And you have the design studio, which is full of men. And then you have the embroidery and dressmaking studio, and that's full of women. So there's definitely a sort of divide in the sorts of work that women were doing in the 19th century.
Welcome to Confect Corner. I'm your host, Sophie Grove, coming to you from London. This might be the first episode of 2026, but Confect's team has been busy, travelling in between fashion weeks, dispatched to snowy locations and checking the latest exhibitions. As ever, I'm joined in the studio by Gillian Tobias to help us go through it all, and this month by Confect's luxury markets editor, Brenda Toohey. Hello to you both.
Hello. Hello. Lovely to be in studio with you.
Well, it's wonderful to see you in 2026, this first show of the year. We're marking it with a little gathering in this sort of rather chilly London week. But Brenda, tell me what you've been up to. You've been really scurrying around the whole week, hither and thither, doing, little trips across London, discovering things for Confect.
I have. I did have a motto. I said that maybe I'd try to slow down a little bit this year, but that was obviously not true. So on Monday, I went around to a jewellery house and looked at something new that they have, which you might be able to see in Confect Spring. So do get that issue. Last night, I went as a guest of Cunard to see Letters live at Queen Elizabeth Hall. And
yes.
It was so wonderful how moved you could be by the reading aloud of a letter. I was laughing, was nearly crying.
And the importance of handwritten letters and what is lost by it. It's just, this art and this connection to oneself and one's friends and relatives that, is very much at risk of disappearing.
No, it's interesting. And who were the letters by? That you heard last night?
Well, there was a 16th century pirate. He was very, very naughty. He was basically lying, fibbing about where he was. And, he was actually up to no good. He was trying to lure other ships to steal their, gold, to steal their prizes from within. He was very naughty. And that was read by one of the actual captains from the Cunard line. And he was fantastic.
It was a seafaring evening. It sounds really wonderful and kind of in the great tradition of tales and letters from those great voyages. Tell me, Gillian, about your voyages. I know you've been in the Swiss Alps, in the snowy Engadin. Tell me about your adventures.
I was very lucky to have had a week filming in St. Moritz. We were doing a story really looking at Swiss hospitality, but looking at how Swiss hospitality is kind of evolving to really fit the mood of the moment. And what does luxury mean today? And amongst other things, one of my favourite places that opened their doors to us was Casa Marchetta, the inn that I think is going to be featured in Confect. It's the sort of baby of the founders of Hauser and Wirth, who are very, the area, the Engadine Valley is very, very close to their heart. They've taken this old inn and restaurant, which was, quite modest, quite simple, and turned it into a 13-bedroom guest house, an exquisite restaurant. And the beauty of this is they've worked with these amazing Persian designers, but the designers said it's almost like trying to make sure it hasn't changed the essence of what it was. So there are touches of working with all the craftsmen in the area to bring it back to this spirit of the valley. Beautiful, beautiful curtains embroidered by a nun from the local convent, blankets woven by, specialists in the area, wood carvings. And then it's really made to feel like a home because of this incredible personal art collection from Ivan and Manuela Wirth. You get to go deeper in and you go downstairs to the restaurant where the chef, it's a real labour of love. And it really is going and meeting all the local producers, the people who provide the milk and the cheeses and the meats. And the menu is like traditional, but with really creative contemporary touches. So you just really feel that this is just going to be this not in-your-face experience, but a lovely emotional experience if you eat there, if you stay there. And I went away thinking, okay, I have to try and find a weekend that I can actually, wake up in this beautiful retreat.
Heaven. I mean, never mind. I mean, it's wonderful to hear about the handwork of a nun, but then also when you get in there, the art collection is just so incredible. And when I was actually in Manuela's new restaurant, or newish restaurant in New York, and you've got these Louise Bourgeois spiders crawling above. There's incredible works of art that are completely integrated into the concept, and you just hardly even notice them after a while. In Mount Street, it's similarly.
What they do so well. They are essentially curators. They understand also the intrinsic value of original design. I think that when they take over, when they buy into a place, they elevate it. They bring it back to what it was at its inception. They really are incredible curators.
Yeah, I can't wait to go. I saw your film, so beautiful. I can't wait to go. We have a beautiful interview with Manuela Wirth coming up in Confect, so that's something to look forward to. And she has the most incredible wardrobe as well. So
quite a collection, I hear.
Bouke de Vries is an artist known for transforming broken ceramics into works that celebrate repair, history and imperfection. Trained as a conservator, his practice explores what happens when fragments are carefully reassembled rather than discarded.
That approach recently led to a collaboration with Belgian fashion designer Dries Van Noten, which led to Vries creating one-of-a-kind perfume bottles made from restored fragments.
Confect's Brenda Tui spoke to Bouke about that project, the value of repair and why fragility can be a form of luxury.
So my process is quite holistic. It often takes in consideration precious objects, mundane, everyday ones, and objects that have gone through a traumatic event in their life. I use broken ceramics. I don't break things up on purpose, but I use things that have been broken and lost their value, and I'm trying to give them a new life and bring their story forward. And I've done that in objects that are called memory vessels and exploded works of art. And I work by myself, just on my own, without assistance. And I'm very ritualistic in my work. I come in every day, the same time. I do all the same things because that gives me comfort. And I imbue that energy into my work. And my approach is very fluid. And the intimacy you're referring to is also part of the DNA of my work.
Each piece is entirely unique. And why was that singularly important for this project?
Well, I think my art is about uniqueness, and a fragment is a fragment. You can't alter it, so I can't control how the fragments are. And I like the idea of different variations of unique pieces as the concept behind the bottles. And also what makes a perfume unique is it's the different notes in a perfume. And I think I sort of have those different notes in my work, and they create different moods.
There's a strong still life tradition in your work. How do the floral compositions extend the world of the fragrance?
So when I work with my still lives, I started making these flowers from porcelain. And the idea behind it is that the porcelain is clay. Clay is also the soil that roses grow best in. But out of this clay, objects are made in porcelain, and then they break. And then I'm returning them into roses, and they're growing out of my metaphoric clay soil of porcelain fragments.
It's really poetic and magical. Soy malake is often described as silk, translated into scent. What do you think gives this fragrance such long-lasting resonance?
So I'm not so good on actually perfumes. I don't really wear perfume, but I have started wearing Soy malake because actually I really like it. And for me, it was an extension of what I'm doing, because of course the bottle speaks to me straight away, the blue and white. And I find the blue and white, the history of blue and white, so interesting, how it starts in China and then travels through Persia, through Spain, Italy, France, to Holland, where it becomes Delftware because they're trying to copy porcelain. And to be able to bring that all together in a project like this is just magic.
It really is. The collaboration brings perfume and porcelain into unusually close conversation. What excited each of you most when this idea was first proposed?
Okay, well, for me, it was, first of all, just the idea to work with Dries. And because it's a label that I've known forever, from when he started in the 80s, and always been credible and fantastic and respected. And having had a fashion background, then becoming a restorer, then becoming an artist, I felt sort of became quite removed from that. And then one day to receive an email to say, we think your work really synergizes with the Sweater Maliki, it was like, a dream come true.
Dries Van Noten is a house built on contrast of polish and rawness, discipline and romance. Where do you see that tension most clearly in this collaboration?
Well, I think we also share a sort of strong commitment to craftsmanship and sustainability, and there's also this, in a lot of my work, it's about textures, which I think also refers back to Dries. A lot of ceramics is all about patterns. And Dries is also known for his textiles and patterns. So it was just a really easy combination.
Mm-hmm. And I think out of it, you've created something entirely new. So there are 5 unique bottles that have been created.
Yes.
And these pieces will live both in boutiques and private homes?
Yes, hopefully, yes.
Yes, so how do you hope people interact with them?
Well, I hope that they will use them on a daily basis and live with them. And I always think that, I've got some beautiful pieces of antique porcelain. I like to use them because that's what they were made for. Use them. And I'm very happy for this to sit in somebody's room, and the client gets enjoyment out of that, lifts the bottle out of, wears the scent, puts the bottle back. It's fantastic.
They really are magical.
Use it, live with it.
And I suppose when you like to use your fabulous pieces of porcelain, if they break, that's okay too.
That's okay too. I always say that every drama is an opportunity.
Oh, I like that. That's wonderful. Porcelain is a material associated with fragility, permanence, and domestic ritual. How does it speak to perfume, something equally intimate yet ephemeral?
The amazing thing about porcelain is that it's fragile, but it's also incredibly strong. Porcelain is a strong material and fragile, and a perfume starts off strong as well. The overwhelming sense of smell when you first spray it, but then it becomes fragile as well. It dissipates and disappears.
Your work often celebrates breakage, repair, and transformation. How do those ideas translate when an object is new, precious, and complete?
So I don't break anything. So I don't worry about complete things, because I start always off with the broken things. I hunt for broken things. And I go to auctions, and I have contacts from my background as a restorer. So perfect doesn't come into my practice.
Bouke, what surprised you most about working at the scale and precision required for perfume bottles?
I'm quite used to, as a restorer, I'm quite used to working on a very small scale, very precision. It's all very miniature. And, I work with magnifying glasses on when I do restoration. So this was actually no problem whatsoever. And I kind of like working in this small scale, in this small domestic scale.
The porcelain floral compositions feel almost entirely painterly, echoes of classical life, traditions translated into 3 dimensions. What role do these works play in the wider narrative of Soy Maliki?
Well, for me, for my practice, being Dutch, still life has always been an important part of what I'm doing. And when I started, what I did was making actually 3-dimensional still lifes. And the idea was, this is the still life after the painter has finished with it. The bowl is kicked in the corner, got broken. The lovely flowers that were on there died off and dried out. And I made my own 3-dimensional compositions like that. And that's what I also tried to do in these pieces. And again, it refers back to the whole story I told earlier about the clay and the rose growing out of it.
Flowers in still life painting often speak of beauty, fragility, and time passing.
Yes.
Were those associations deliberate here?
Not deliberate here, but in my practice, they are very much the sort of the memento mori and all things. But for me, it is like, when a plate is broken, when a object is broken, it's not the end of the life. It is about fragility, but it's about giving it a new narrative.
The artist Bouke de Vries there. Brenda, such a fascinating conversation. I need to ask you what it was like to see his creations. What stood out most for you?
I think that when Bouke said that when something breaks, that is not the end. It's just the beginning of something entirely different. So it would make you look at tragedies in the porcelain world quite differently. He only works with fragments. He doesn't break anything or smash it. And I suppose what he has done in this instance is give fragrance, which is a fleeting, transient kind of a beauty, a real permanence. He has created 5 ceramic receptacles made from fragments of porcelain to house the soy malacca bottle, the Dries Van Noten perfect scent, the first scent. So it allows you to give a home to your bottle. You can, if you need to, you can get one at the Dries Van Noten boutique here. They will be only sold in London from early February. But it just has elevated this perfume, this fragrance that you don't see. It's invisible to something that you can see.
And it's refillable, so you can kind of go back.
Yeah.
And kind of just keep this piece in your life.
Yeah, I didn't realize that until the actual interview. And Bouke said, no, the bottles are all refillable. So coming up a little later, he's going to do something else for Dries, but we'll talk about that another time. But these 5 pieces, all one-offs, all available in London early February, are really just fabulous.
Just can't imagine wandering down there with your empty bottle. Fill me up. But, I mean, you have to, don't you?
I adore the idea of collecting fragments of broken pieces. And I just think it's very heady. I remember walking along the beach in Portofino. And along that sort of pebbly beach, there always have washed up these old fragments from the local potteries and shipwrecks. They're blues and turquoises and glass. And so I spent hours just wandering around with my little bucket like a child, but collecting them.
You know, here in London, you need to have a license to go mudlarking down on the Thames. You can't just willy-nilly climb down a staircase, and start rummaging around there by the shore of the river. No, you have to have a license. I used to work...
I realize that.
Yeah, you have to have a license. I worked with a mudlarker called Ted Sands who wrote... Uh-oh, Sophie.
Don't tell, because I have been known to do a bit of spontaneous mudlarking, and I got these Elizabethan pins. Contraband pins. You can tell they're Elizabethan because they're hand kind of forged. But anyway.
And now they're in the Museum of London?
No, they're in Sophie's cupboard.
Oh, is that a pin you're wearing now on your lapel?
Anyway, moving on swiftly, I'd say.
It was pretty fabulous. Just to give a permanence, a 3-dimensional object to something that is so fleeting. Perfume could start off strong and, well, maybe for some people my perfume is quite strong all day. I don't know. I love perfume. I'm a bit heavy-handed with it. But it does drift off into wherever by the end of the day.
Now let's cross over to our Zurich bureau where Confect's style director Marcella Palek is standing by. Here she tells us what caught her eye this month.
Hello, London. I was recently in Marseille and discovered a très sympa resto called Otto, a name that you can remember very well. As you have to cross the small kitchen to get into the main space, you will discover already what you maybe want to order. It's mad dishes, super delicious. Combine your lunch there with a visit of Chateau Borelli and the excellent Museum of Contemporary Art, and of course the Cité Radieuse by Le Corbusier. They are all not far from Otto.
Confect style director Marcella Palek in Zurich. Thank you. Since its early days, the shopping paradise Liberty London has been known for its beautiful, thoughtfully made in-house fabrics. Now, on the occasion of the design house's 150th anniversary, a new exhibition has been staged to celebrate the contributions made by women textile designers to that illustrious reputation.
Women in Print, 150 Years of Liberty Textiles at the William Morris Gallery traces the rich, colourful history of Liberty fabrics and shines a light on those who made it happen.
Confect's Sophie Monaghan-Coombs went along to find out more and to speak with the exhibition's co-creator, Roisin Ingleby. She began by giving a brief introduction to the store.
So Liberty is a department store located near Regent Street and Oxford Street, so the kind of traditionally sort of fashionable shopping area of London. It was founded in 1875 by Arthur Liberty, hence its name, and it's a really unusual example of a business that actually kept in continuous production for 150 years. So Liberty started as a sort of importer of goods from the Middle East and Asia, sort of part of the real kind of fashion for sort of quote-unquote oriental goods in the 19th century. But they quickly started developing their own products, and fabrics was one of the most successful and remains one of the most successful aspects of the shop. So a lot of people, I think, would associate Liberty with fabric, especially with sort of floral prints, dressmaking fabric, upholstery fabric.
And those fabrics, which you have lots of different examples of them here, there's lots of different prints, lots of floral prints, but also lots of other ones. But I wonder what it is, if you could find something that makes something a Liberty print. Is it about the way that it's produced? Is it something about its kind of thoughtful design? How would you describe what unites them?
It's a great question. So the exhibition spans 150 years of prints designed by women textile print designers. And you're absolutely right. It's much more diverse than probably you might expect if you're kind of used to these Liberty florals. There's a few things I think that do sort of unite Liberty fabrics, and these go really back to kind of the founding of the firm in the 19th century. Firstly is an interest in nature. So Liberty is rooted in the arts and crafts movement, which was a sort of a design movement that aimed to, amongst other things, kind of bring the natural inside. So kind of the English countryside was a real inspiration, and flowers and sort of the natural depiction of flowers was and remains a really important part of Liberty designs. Secondly, I mentioned there's a sort of Eastern influence, Middle East and Asia, and this influence of Japanese design, especially of motifs that are originally from the Middle East and South Asia, like paisley. They also are kind of recurring design influences. So there's a few things going on, but I think today, one of the things that really makes Liberty stand out is the commitment to hand drawing, and that the patterns are predominantly always first sort of hand drawn, and there is this sort of real dialogue between sort of drawing skills, drawing from life, drawing from nature, and then the development into patterns.
And one of the things that I found really interesting walking around was seeing how this 150-year history of Liberty also, happens at the same time when women's position in the workplace is changing, and it changes over time, but also Liberty has always had kind of female designers at its heart as well. So I wonder if you could talk about the kind of links between Liberty and sort of women's place at work.
It's really interesting, actually. So Liberty, right from the beginning, had a lot of women on their staff. Even in the 1880s, about half of the staff were women, which is quite interesting. However, at that time, women were not, as far as we know, employed as designers, or certainly not regularly employed as designers. So there's a great picture in the exhibition of Liberty in sort of in that late 19th century period. And you have the design studio, which is full of men, and then you have the embroidery and dressmaking studio, and that's full of women. So there's definitely a sort of divide in the sorts of work that women were doing in the 19th century. Which is not to say that women weren't designing. So William Morris' daughter, May Morris, she was one of the pioneering female designers of that period. So there was certainly a sort of movement of women into the field of professional design, but it was not until kind of the early 20th century, around the First World War, that women designers really become more of a sort of professional presence. So in the exhibition, there are two designers who we highlight for this sort of transitional period. One is Winifred Mould, the other is Madeleine Lawrence. They both worked for a design studio called the Silver Studio, and they produced over decades many designs, including ones that were sold to Liberty. However, what's interesting is that both women worked from home. So even at the sort of early 20th century period, there is still a kind of division of the way that women work, even if the type of work they do is becoming sort of more similar. So it's not until the kind of 1930s and then into the post-war period that women really become sort of at the forefront of design for Liberty. But then after the Second World War, the vast majority of designs were sort of increasingly done by women. And the first in-house designer for Liberty, Colleen Farr, obviously was a woman. And, you know, that kind of tradition continues till today. So I think that Liberty are, you know, an interesting case study of the way that women sort of increasing professionalisation into the sphere of design, sort of moving away from domestic crafts that would have been considered sort of amateur, certainly unpaid and unrecognised, and more into the kind of the sort of professional influence of women designers that we see today.
One of the designers that kind of stuck out to me as I was walking around, and you have lots of examples of her designs and photos of her as well, is Althea McNish. And I was wondering if you could just give a little bit of an introduction as to who she was and what her designs were like.
Yes, so Althea McNish was a Trinidadian British textile designer. She was born in Trinidad. She came to England as a young woman and studied at the Royal College of Art. Upon graduating, she almost immediately had designs sort of bought by Liberty. So it's a really great example of how Liberty at that period, which is sort of, you know, in the 1950s, 1960s, were really on the lookout for kind of fresh young designers. And what McNish's sort of statement kind of aesthetic was her fantastic use of colour. You know, she said when she came from Trinidad that London seemed very grey, and I think you can imagine, so especially in the post-war period, London probably did feel like a very grey city. The weather, the architecture, you know, sort of people sort of rationing and clothing after the war. And what McNish did was sort of transform the aesthetic, essentially, especially of furnishing fabrics, for a British audience who wanted something new, exciting, different, but didn't know what it was just yet. So McNish's patterns are, you know, very floral. They're very interested in the natural world, but they have this kind of tropical element and certainly a fantastic command of colour palette that was really sort of striking at the time. And it shows, Liberty's interest in sort of taking risks on young designers and the ability of the Liberty name to then really also help young designers kind of, you know, promote themselves and give them a bit of credibility and sort of power in their design work for the future.
As you say, Liberty is still committed to hand drawing designs and this very labour intensive, careful, considered production, as it has always been, but I think particularly now that is very unique in the terms of how many of our clothes are made and how we buy them. And I wonder if that's something that you thought about as you were putting together this exhibition, how, you know, different a lot of the shopping experiences you're showing here and a lot of the way that things are made is in stark contrast to a lot of our sort of shopping experiences now.
Yes, I think that part of the aim of the exhibition is to help people think about where their clothes come from, where their fabric comes from. I mean, we are all surrounded by fabric all the time. We wear it, we put it in our curtains, we sleep in it, we use printed fabrics constantly. But the vast majority of us, and I include myself in this, don't regularly think, oh, who made this design, who made this pattern? And so by kind of humanizing this process of design, one of the aims of the exhibition is not only to credit the designers whose inspiration and whose creativity, enable us to enjoy this sort of aesthetic, but also to help people consider, the design process. This is someone's work, someone's made this, and hopefully that will encourage people to think, about sort of the sources of their clothes, their upholstery, and to value it and to think, this is someone's labour, and maybe take care of it more and think about it more as something precious rather than as something throwaway.
That was Roisin Inglesby from the William Morris Gallery, and Women in Print, 150 Years of Liberty Textiles is open until the 21st of June 2026. We all have lived and loved Liberty Textiles. I do adore them. I have a kind of slightly ambiguous relationship with that much decoration, but I love thinking about them and sort of thinking about William Morris and his incredible pioneering artisanal socialist principles. But then sometimes when I actually see the fabrics, I don't want them necessarily in my house.
Well, I remember one of my very good friends, Isabel Eden. When I came to London first, she had a fabulous, quite small flat in Camden, but, she had a flat. And her bedroom was covered in William Morris all over. I mean, the wallpaper was William Morris. The curtains were William Morris. The bedspread was William Morris. The valance was William Morris. I don't think the carpet was, but it might have been another pattern. It could have been. But that sense of cocooning and also claustrophobia was really quite something.
I mean, I am quite minimal. Like, I don't like to wear pattern. My home is just sort of various whites and apple peppermint greens. But I love to go and see in the Liberty store that maximal more is more pattern and textile. And I think really what it is drawing me back to that heady period of time, that history, that very creative hothouse. And so I like the heritage of it. I like to look at it, but I don't think I buy into it.
I mean, it's such a wonderful, mesmeric and kind of luscious palette that you're so drawn into. But then at a certain point, you kind of want to stop with it. And I think in a way that our interiors have become really spaces that we can just really think, and they're very fresh palettes. So it's unusual to find a lot of William Morris, like your friend. But I think it's just so beautiful when you think about how he abstracted all of these incredible sort of flora and fauna and gave them this, actually at the time, incredibly modern spin. And as we said, he was an incredible pioneer of his time as well. So it's interesting how they filtered through design and modern taste and then been revived. People like the House of Hackney have tried to kind of revive a sort of similar spirit, but actually nothing touches the Liberty prints.
No, they are incredible. I intend to have a claustrophobic room in my new house. I'm going to have pattern, except I might not just have one pattern. I might have lots of different patterns and textures.
Is that your retreat?
Yes.
Brenda's boudoir.
Yeah, there's a story called The Yellow Wallpaper, which is an incredible short story about a woman who's convalescing in a room with this patterned wallpaper. And then she sort of goes a little bit mad and then starts seeing herself crawling through the wallpaper. And it's a really amazing kind of early modern piece. And it really evokes some of the feelings that you have when you get a bit too kind of psychedelic with your wallpaper. So I would advise reading that before you choose.
I'm thinking red. Full on red.
And that is all for Confect Corner today. My thanks to Gillian Tobias and Brenda Tui for joining me in the studio. Confect Corner is produced and edited by Carlotta Ribello and Steph Chungu. I'm Sophie Grove. Goodbye and thanks for listening.